First of all, on behalf of the Monterey County Democratic Party, my name is Alan Hoffa, and I want to thank you all for being here. We are here to honor Simone Salinas, who has had a long and distinguished career of public service here. First as a council member in Salinas, as an assembly member at the state legislature, and of course as supervisor for District 3. Our party believes it's important to recognize the work that Simone has done, and that's why we wanted to have this event. We also want to deepen our ties in South County, and we're very grateful for Scheid Winery for hosting us here. I also just wanted to recognize some of the elected officials that we have with us.
How are you?
First of all, Assemblymember Robert Rivas. Juan Aronga is here representing our Senator, Ana Caballero. Mayor of Seaside, Ian Oglesby. David Kahn, Greenfield Elementary School District trustee. Of course, Chris Lopez, Monterey County Board of Supervisors, District 3. Anthony Roca, Salinas Union High School Board.
Chuck.
And George Riley, Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. Excuse me. And Timothy Barrett, former Monterey City Council member. And myself, yes, Monterey City Council member. Simone, we've got a few folks who want to say some things to recognize you and who know about the great work that you've done. And but before I call Chris Lopez up to get us started, I have. Excuse me. I have a small token of our appreciation for the work that you've done, and I'd like to present that to you now. Thank you so much. And at this time, I'd like to call up Supervisor Chris Lopez.
Thank you, Alan. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 3rd District. I want to thank Kurt Golnick for opening up this facility. I know that I ran into some folks this morning at another event I was at, and they told me about this event. And I said, oh, I know, I'll be there. And they said, oh, good, because we had people out there all day making sure the grounds look beautiful. So I want to thank Kurt for putting in that effort to make sure this facility shines today. You know, one of the things that Alan touched on was Simone's distinguished career, but one of the most important ones that wasn't mentioned was his time as a teacher, his time giving back directly to the community as an educator, and making sure that children in our community had their voice heard. Over the years, I spent 10 years working for Supervisor Salinas, first as an intern, then as an aide, then as his chief. And the one thing that never changed was his go-to story. Every single one of them involved the children that he listened to in his classroom, in his community, and their needs, and why that drove him to do the things that wound up leading him, serving us all as a community throughout Southern Monterey County, but also throughout the region up into San Jose even for a time. You know, Simone, he's one of those people who is quiet when he's in the room, but when he speaks, everybody listens, because they know that the wisdom that comes from him is from years of service, years of listening, and years of understanding the needs of his community. So I got to follow in some very huge shoes. And to this day, I'm stuffing tissue paper in my shoes every morning, you know, trying to walk in those shoes, and it's difficult. But I can tell you, even this morning, I took my parents up to Rodeo. That's why I've got the garb on I've got on right now. And when I dropped them off, we were saying hi to folks walking in. And half the people I run into still ask, how's Simone? What's he doing? What's he up to? So know that the time you gave your community, people care about you and they love you. A couple gentlemen came up to me that I'd never met before, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, you know what, Simone is our champion. And I said, really, why? And they said, the TNA housing. He made sure that happened. It was a difficult vote, but he made it happen. One of them was a gentleman who helps still run that facility to this day. but he was talking about your efforts and the fact that you stood up, even though it was not a popular vote, to him, it meant the world. And he also said that he was a Watsonville Wildcat, and Simon's a Watsonville Wildcat, and that meant a lot to him, right? That community. But today we celebrate you, Simon, your decades of service to your community, selfless, and we continue to wish you well in retirement, but know that nobody can ever replace you. There's never shoes big enough to fill. The ones you left behind are incredibly large, and the doors that you kicked down using those shoes are the doors that people like myself, Anthony, Robert, we're still walking through those doors because you kicked them down. You made what we do today possible, and that is speaking for our communities. You showed us how. So that's something that you should always be proud of, and know that we're all at your service now because we wouldn't be here without you and that legacy that you leave behind. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chris, for those kind words. And now I'd like to call up Juan Aranga. I believe he has a certificate, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a story also.
Maybe two.
I do have a certificate from Ana, Senator Caballero. But I want to say a few words about Simon myself. I want to talk about four things, and you're going to have to help me remember. One is the first time he ran for the Assembly. Two is a project at the old Comfora labor camp. And three is a project in Pájaro, Railroad Avenue. Remember that? And four is why I have a unique relationship with Simon. When Simon first got elected to the State Assembly, he was on the Board of Supervisors here. Ana was mayor. Fernando Armenta was on the City Council. Ocampo was on the City Council. We had Latino mayors up and down the valley, City Council members, school board members that had been around for a while. Well, the Latino Legislative Caucus in Sacramento decided that they were going to be the ones to tell us who was going to represent us in the State Assembly. And it wasn't one of us, it wasn't Simon, and in fact they had not spoken to Simon, to the mayor, to the mayors, to council, to anybody. The Latino Legislative Caucus in Sacramento decided who was going to represent us, and it was a staffer for one of them. Well, we were pissed. We were just beside ourselves. So we had a big old meeting, and everybody showed up, and everybody was saying, "This ain't right, we can't let her do that." So then somebody started saying, "Yeah, Simon, you run again." So then we all picked up the chant, "Yeah, Simon, you run again." They had said that they were willing to spend $1 million on the campaign to have their person win. So Simon, to his credit, and this is the best story about the kind of courage that Simon has. Simon, to his credit, told us, "Yes, I'll do it, but you got to help me. You got to help me make it happen." So we all rallied around Simon. We defeated the $1 million candidacy of the opponent. Simon won. It was a great, wonderful victory. And after the victory, Senator Polanco, who was the head of the Latino Legislative Caucus, came down, had a meeting with us at Lucy's restaurant, La Chapala, and said, "You beat us fair and square." And after that, Simon took over. And Simon made sure that our district was well represented in Sacramento every time something came up. The second story has to do with what is now called the Comfora Apartments. It used to be a labor camp in awful disrepair. The sewage would clog up, there'd be open sewage on the grounds. It was a horrible, horrible mess. So the group that I work with, the Center for Community Advocacy, ran a series of actions, including rent strikes. We finally convinced the landlord to sell the property to a nonprofit developer who could build something nice for farm workers. Halfway through the project, Dennis Lawler, the head of the organization, came to my office, bien aguitado. I thought he was going to start crying. He sat down and he says, "We can't make it happen. We need $100,000 right away. And the county is telling me there's no way that they can do it. No way they can give us $100,000. And I said, "Dennis, have you talked to Simon yet?" And Dennis said, No, we haven't. So we set up a meeting with Simon, described the situation to Simon, told Simon why the money was needed so desperately. Within a month, the developer had $100,000 to finish the Camfora Labor Camp project. And today it's a beautiful, beautiful farm worker housing site in Soledad. And it's because Simon stepped in. I don't know what you would do, Simon, but whatever you did it well. And so that project has happened. And then the third one, again, I was still with CCA. We were organizing a group of families on Railroad Avenue over in Pájaro, whose homes were always getting flooded, and who had some other serious difficulties there because they had no sidewalks and they had no gutters. So we negotiated with the head, I don't remember his name, he had something to do with Public Works. And he said, no, can't happen, costs too much money. So the families that had organized went to see Simon and told Simon about their plight. And within a couple of months, we had the money to put in sidewalks and gutters on that neighborhood. So that's the kind of representative Simon has been. He was always there for us when we were trying to do things for farm workers. And he's always there for all of us, for all of you, whenever we have something important to say or to do. And the last thing is why I have a special relationship with Simon. I don't know, I bet you many of you don't know this, but I ran against Simon in 1988 and Simon beat me. And he did it soundly. After that, we became political allies, and we helped Simon in his run for the Board of Supervisors and in his run for the State Assembly. But I am the only one in this room who can say that I lost a campaign to Simon Salinas. I have a certificate there for Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. And Simon, I would like to call you up now to share some of your thoughts.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, the Democratic Party for hosting this. And I know it's tough right now. We've got the rodeo going on in Salinas, but to see you come here, I think it's gratifying for me to be able to say thank you for all the years that we worked together. But I guess maybe a sequel to what the story Juan said about the Latino caucus parachuting a candidate here was what happened in November, and that I beat the Republican Jeff Denham. And I was able to turn this into a Democratic district. But also because I think it speaks to what we have to do. Some of us that represent this district, there's a lot of agriculture, a lot of workers, a lot of issues that represent what we need to do as a Democratic Party. Whether it's housing, whether it's economic development, job creation. All those important for my constituents have been what have driven me to look at some issues that maybe some factions within the Democratic Party thought, why is Simon supporting this project or that project? Because I tell them for 30 years, the only thing that constituents in my districts have come to me and said, Simon, help us get a job. We need a job. This is how they feed their families. So I said, to me, economic development is key. We've got to be able to do it. Now, there's the environmental group, the environmental faction sometimes that comes in. And so any project that came to me as a council member, as an assembly member, a supervisor, make sure we follow what the regulations are, because we have to. At the end of the day, most of the projects that I supported ended up in court. I said, this project has to get the support of a judge somewhere to be able to make it happen. But in Monterey County, it's tough. Projects take a long time. But just a little bit of a brief history. I guess, I'm 63 now, but, I've been working for 55 years now. I started working when I was 8 out in the cotton fields in Texas, and maybe Ron knows some of those fields out there. Certainly Juan from El Paso and down there, but
My grandfather's.
your grandfather, yes. And so, growing up and dealing with those issues, a lot of issues that I think why I'm a lifelong Democrat is because the Democratic Party understands how to deal with diversity. You have to, because if you don't, groups, minority groups that don't feel they belong will go somewhere else. And just a little brief history, back in the 60s and 70s, there was even talk within the Mexican-American community, the Chicano community, that maybe we ought to set up our own party. Since the Republicans, we know we can't be with them, and the Democrats don't seem to address our issues. They only come to us when they need our vote. Well, we need our issues addressed, whether they be, again, healthcare, education. And so we quickly realized, well, that's not going to help. We're not going to be able make an impact at the national and state level. So the discussion was, let's get back into the Democratic Party and make sure that we continue working within the party to bring about change. And that has been what has been a driving force behind me. And you see the wind turbines here in Scheid, you see them in Soledad and Gonzales, something that I feel very grateful for, because I voted on AB 32, the climate action bill. That was one of the most contested, heated discussions that we had in 2006. I mean, it was tough, and I was part of a group that said, look, we got to make sure that we look at what's the impact going to be on jobs. We all support, we all acknowledge there's climate change, we've got to address it. But we got to do it, from my perspective, in incremental ways, specifically when we have agriculture, when we give industries that require that we continue to move product into the processing plants. And so AB 32 was a lot of discussion, to the point that as an assembly member, I had Robert Redford call my office. And he said, Assemblymember Salinas, we need your vote. I said, who are you? My name is Robert Redford. Robert Redford, who? I said, I'm calling from Colorado, and we really need your vote. I said, look, Mr. Redford, you'll get it, but I'm going to have to tweak this bill a little bit so that it doesn't hurt my farm workers. Because people say, well, what the hell do you care so much about the ag folks? I said, but I care about the jobs for the farm workers. And this bill would make it very difficult for us to move produce from the fields to the processing plants. So that's important, we worked it out. But also to see that once we passed that, to see how, at least in California, we've embraced it. We know we've got to look for alternative energy sources. And we've got wind here, but I'm also fortunate to have been able to do the ribbon cutting with Supervisor Lopez down at Parkfield, where we just opened a 350 megawatt solar plant, one of the largest in California. That'll power 100,000 homes a year. Big project, so big that Apple bought quite a bit of it to power all the facilities here. So that was a result of that vote on AB 32. And so some of the votes here, I think, test your mettle. And as one was saying, housing has always been an important one for me. And I've had to battle throughout the 30 years in terms of some folks that are the NIMBYs, not in my backyard. They support affordable housing, just not here. I said, well, every community should do their part. The peninsula should do their part. The Salinas Valley is doing their part. North Monterey County, because that's how we start addressing the issue. Otherwise, we don't even get to the issue of the homeless in our communities. And I'm glad that the board and the council in Salinas are continuing, as slow as it might seem to some. They're still looking to address for sites to be able to deal with the homeless. And it's not just a traditional homeless stereotype that we have, it's families now and it's children. To the point that I had to explain to some folks at the soccer constitution field. I had a couple of ladies come in to me. Mr. Salinas, you've represented for so long, you helped build the soccer fields. Why are you taking it away to build a homeless shelter? I said, that's not for this. They're remodeling it. In fact, we're spending millions to improve it. It's going to potentially go up there once they do all their studies and it fits. That's where it should go. And I said, I would in fact invite you to take your children, go to that shelter when it's open, and invite those children to come and play soccer here with your kids. That's what neighbors do with neighbors, is we take care of each other. And so my hope, again, my hope is that the elected stand firm and continue doing, those are tough votes. I know they're tough votes for some because they get threatened by the neighbors around there. We're going to get a petition, we're going to recall you. So be it. And I say that because when you take votes out there, everybody thinks, well, what's your next step? When I was in the assembly, one of the toughest bills also that we dealt with was the gay marriage bill. Very tough contested. It had come up in 2005, it only got like 35 votes. So they did it a 2-year bill. The next year it comes up, and I talked to Senator Leno, Senator Mignon, Kehoe, John Laird. They were the LGBT caucus saying, Simon, we need your vote for this. I said, look, get it to 40. I will not let this bill die. I will put up the vote, even though in my district, I've got to deal with some more conservative, moderate forces there on social issues, but I will not let this bill die. But get it to a point where we know it has a chance of passing. Don't bring it up if it's only going to get 20 votes when you need 41. And so I remember it was the last day in session back in 2006, and it gets up to 40 votes. And Speaker Nunez says, first call, second call, third call, and they'll close it. And it gets first call. And they said they didn't need me because they said they had found other Democrats to vote for it. So it gets first call, second, third call, nobody's coming in, and if nobody votes for it, it dies. So I put up the vote. And the galleries erupted in applause. It was the first state, the large state in the union that had voted for gay marriage. Not civil unions, but gay marriage. And so people ask, well, I'm a bit confused because folks are saying, well, if you are thinking of running for Senate, Central Valley, this ain't going to play well. They're going to hit you hard with this. But as I thought about it, it's like, you need to be able to, after years that you're elected, you have to be able to go home to sleep and say, my vote, I didn't hurt anybody. I looked at the issue, I looked at the facts, I looked at both sides. Today, under today's factual situation, this is a good vote, this is how I'm gonna vote. But for that one, I said, look, because I have to come and explain to all my Mexican immigrants here, Simon, we heard you voted for gay marriage. How could you do that? You're Catholic. You're from a Latino conservative on this issues. How could you vote for that? I said, how could I not? You folks asked me to fight for civil rights, for non-discrimination against Mexicans, against immigrants, and I've always been an advocate and a fighter for our civil rights and for non-discrimination, for equal protection of the law. Here's an issue where for this group, because some think they're different, we should just maybe give them civil unions. But civil union doesn't give them the full rights that every other heterosexual couple has. So I said, to me, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. You can't be for civil rights except for this little group. So at the end, once I went through that process, I said, look, this is the right thing to do. I voted for it, and I felt relieved. I said, I would have felt bad if I had not voted for it. That somehow for this group, I turned my back on that very critical vote. To the point where the next day after the celebration, Senator Migden from San Francisco sent me a beautiful bouquet of roses. And on the card she said, Simon, if I were straight, I'd marry you. I don't always remember, kept her little card. But those are just some of the issues that are out there. And from my perspective is that we're Democrats because I think we need to work through some of the tough issues. When I was on that board, I also looked at the issues at Fort Ord. And Fort Ord has some opportunities to help the communities of Marina and Seaside have their economic development. They were devastated. We all saw the devastation. And yet somehow, now when they had the ability to do something, some groups start saying, well, no, we don't want you to develop those lands. We set aside 18,000 acres for open space forever. And this amount, whatever was left, to be able to allow those communities and the county to develop job creation, housing, do what needs to be done. So those issues have to be addressed. I know they're tough issues, and I've never been adverse to sitting down with folks that disagree with me. But we have to always be open about it, and we have to understand that we bring those issues because that's our bread and butter. But we are Democrats because we sit down and we talk to, we understand fairness, we understand equity, and what it means to struggle to be able to get that done. And we do it. And so my advice to you is to always seek out, come down to the valley, get to know the Democrats from down here, because you're going to find their priority might be different than yours. But we'll have a lot of similarity when it comes to immigration, when it comes to deal with the moron who's in the White House, because that's what it is. I don't know what other adjective to use, and I'm not a mean person. I don't have a mean bone in my body, but I get mad when he criticizes, and calls my community, the Mexican immigrant community, rapist or whatever he does, what he does out there, so nobody can understand. But on the other hand, getting angry doesn't solve anything. What'll solve it is next year when we win the presidency and when we win the Senate and the House. That'll help us. That's where the factionalism has got to be. We've got to be able to broach that and keep us all together. And you can't get angry, because you can't get everything you want. At the end, the common issues that bind us ought to be the guiding principle of what keeps us as Democrats. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, David, for hosting this. Thank you for being here for Democrats in Greenfield. Juan and Chris, thank you very much. Thank you.
You want to say something? No.
I don't know who they are.
I'll let Karen do it. Karen, can you thank our sponsors?
So, before I do that, I just wanted to say one thing, which is Simone brought up the current occupant of the White House. I generally don't talk about him. But as I was thinking about this day today, and looking at some of the accomplishments of Simone, thinking about how his family came here as immigrants from Mexico, and then you look at the contributions he's made to our community as a teacher and as a public servant. And it's simply so true that immigration and diversity is what makes our country great. And we need to consistently and unequivocally stand up for our immigrant brothers and sisters. Our party is doing that, and we will continue to do that. And thank you for all that you've done for all of our community, all of the diverse members of our community. So we have plenty of wine. We've still got food. You're welcome. Were there some other folks who wanted to say a couple of words? I see Juan, and I saw George, and I see Anthony.
Before we get started with that, I just want to thank our silver sponsors. We have 3 silver sponsors. Alan Hoffa is a silver sponsor of this event. Rob Chester and Building Trades. And also the third person, let me think here, it's coming to me. Chris Lopez, let's run it, Chris. I'm sorry, Chris. I knew it was coming. All right, thank you for those 3, because otherwise, without those contributions, this would have been a little more difficult to do. Yes. Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody coming. And so, who wants to say something? Oh, why?
One
Sure.
quick thing. I've been married to Anna for 35 years and I want to keep it that way. She would kill me if I didn't explain why she's not here today. She is accompanying a youth mariachi group from Hollister called the Mariachi Juvenil Corazón Jalisciense to the state fair so that they can participate in the festival at the state fair. Anna nominated them and she's escorting them to it. That's why she's not here, Simon.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be in this beautiful location. Where do I start? Those of you who know me know that I'm not someone who's at a loss for words most of the time. And I've been in office at 19. I don't get intimidated easily. But I have to say, sitting at this table with Juan and Simon, I slowly felt I was shrinking as I was hearing all their stories. And I was like, wow, what I have done is nothing compared to the amazing work these people have done. And my district is one that I'm able to run in and win because of the work that Simon did and because of the work that Juan did. I represent Creek Bridge and most of East Salinas in my trustee area. As I was knocking on doors, I couldn't help but think, here I am knocking on doors 20 years later, 30 years later, and these doors are knocked down by people like Juan, by people like Simon, and they allowed for people like me to be elected. So I truly owe my political, career to both of you and to you, especially for being the first one who led the way. So I just want to thank you and let you know that as more young people run for office, I'll make it my mission to tell them the story of Simon and to tell them why we're able to run, to tell them why we're able to win. So yeah.
I'm George Riley from the Peninsula, but I just wanted to be able to look at Simone to say this. You may not remember much of this, but I only moved here about 2000, and I got involved in some election integrity issues on the Peninsula, and it was kind of a machine-oriented thing, whether there's a paper ballot or not. I wanted to go to the Board of Supervisors. I heard there was a quiet committee, subcommittee of the Board of Supervisors who were dealing with election integrity or election issues. I don't know. But he had the Justice Department oversight of everything that changed in this area. So I remember I went to Dave Potter, because he was a supervisor, and I said, I want to talk to the board members. I want to talk to the board about this. Who we do this? There were 3 of us, 3 white people. Okay, and Dave said, okay, you should probably talk to Simone. And then he mentioned this subcommittee. So I remember we were preparing for doing this. Now we're on the Peninsula, and where's the minority population on the Peninsula? Not really in my neighborhood. And so we were told, you're not black, you're not Latino, you're not, what is it that you're trying to promote? And we said, the principle. So anyway, we got a meeting with you. Armento was on your committee, subcommittee. You agreed to hold a special meeting in order to have us to be able to present what we thought were issues of principle. Not population-based, not numbers, not locations, but principle. And you let us have the floor for 45 minutes worth of discussion, presentation, and so on. I just want to thank you, because it goes back a long way. I don't want to forget those kind of things, and it's based on principle. And I think that's an acknowledgement of your values too. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And I just want to recognize Wendy Root Askew on the MPUSD board who's here. And Mary Ann, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just quickly, because I have to get back to the Peninsula, but I wanted Simone to know why I came all the way down here for you. Just to say thank you, because I came here in the Army in 1990, and when I got out of the Army, I guess in about 94, I moved to Salinas. So I understand, I think either you or Anna was the mayor, but I've been following you. And when you started mentioning about what you said and the support that you have for the former Fort Ord, I realize that because I'm living that now, and one of our biggest supporters is Joe Gunther, because of what you established about how the responsibility Salinas has and some of the Valley folks have to what's going on in the Peninsula. So I wanted to thank you for that and that leadership from decades of leadership, because you were my supervisor for a while and you were my assembly representative for a while. So I wanted you to know that as a person, I want to come and thank you for that and what you've done to show me how we all should stay Democrats. Even though we don't all agree, we all have a common purpose, which is the betterment for our constituents. And you know, you went back to the Big Ten. Sometimes we talk about that, sometimes we give that, you know, we talk about it, but we speak about it and it goes so fast. But when you slow down and you tell everybody, yes, my constituent needs jobs. And we can disagree because we go to certain churches, we can disagree because we like certain individual attributes like the environment, but at the end of the day, people have to be able to take care of their families, because that's what this society is built on. And so I want to say personally, thank you so much for what you did, and I appreciate the Democratic Party for putting this on, because you deserve this recognition. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Ian. And we have Assemblymember Rivas.
So since everyone else is getting up, I got to say something as well. This is not my style. You know, if I could avoid speaking in public, I'd do it. So Simone is extremely special to me personally, and you know, Chris and I have very similar stories. You know, you hear about Bill Walsh and you know the coaching tree of Bill Walsh, right? So I come off of the coaching tree of Simone Salinas and Ana Caballero. Simone was the very first person that gave me an opportunity to work in politics. I was an undergrad at Sacramento State, and I worked as an intern in his Capitol office. And you know, I've told my story often. Grew up in farm worker housing. I had a lifelong stutter, at times a debilitating stutter. And I remember the times I had to answer the phone for Simone. I couldn't even say his name. And luckily, it was Simone on the other line, and I could just hear him laughing. He always made me feel very comfortable with my speech issues. But it was that opportunity that I had in my last year in undergrad, working in the Capitol office, that helped me realize, you know, I had assumed, I graduated from Sacramento State and I go work at the Capitol. But that year of experience working for Simone and realizing how I hated working at the Capitol. And I hated working at the Capitol because I felt it was a self-consuming, self-interested place. I expected as an undergraduate student going and working on policy to solve problems. People, as I realized, were too motivated in solving their own problems and in furthering their own careers. And what I found is Simone wasn't that way. Simone was someone that was absolutely vested in this community and in the Salinas Valley. And so when I made that decision to come home, the first call I got was from Simone, saying, hey, I have an opening in my district office, why don't you go interview? And so to make a long story short, I worked for Simone until he was turned out of the assembly. So all of the stories that he's told about the gay marriage, I remember, because I remember being at that time. When you look at the assembly district, Simone made it Democratic, but he also made it a Latino Democratic seat. Because when you look at the folks that have followed him, Ana Caballero, Luis Alejo, the Latino caucus has they are extremely grateful for the work that Simone did and that Juana did to make this possible, not only for the Latino caucus, but for state policy since then. And so certainly, and I recall as a staff member after that vote, we were extremely proud of Simone, but we were also terrified because of all the death threats we got in the office. But it was that time that I got to work for Simone and see his leadership, where I shared this story with Simone. Dotson Wilson, who's the chief clerk, has been the chief clerk of the assembly for decades. I was in the elevator and he joined me in the elevator and he said, hey, Mr. Rivas, I have to comment, you're very calm. You're always so calm in this chaotic environment. And I said, well, I don't take credit for that. I take credit for the people I've worked for, like Simone Salinas and Ana Caballero. He said, that says it all. Those are two people that share that same style and that demeanor. And I'm very thankful to have had 8 years on the Board of Supervisors, to serve in the Assembly, the same seat that Simone has served in. Because my style, very similar to Chris's style, was inherited from what I saw with Simone. Someone that was very compassionate, someone that is absolutely a collaborator, who works with everybody, and someone that is highly, highly ethical. And those are traits that I wouldn't trade in for anything, and certainly appreciate everything that I inherited from Simone. So Simone, thank you. And I didn't give him a certificate. I just felt it was awkward for me to bring him a certificate because I made hundreds of them when I worked for him. But I'm not convinced that he's not going to be back in elective office, because I certainly hope that he will one day. Because as he said, he's still in his 60s. He's got at least another maybe
30.
10 or 20 years left to serve us here in this valley. So, and thank you all for coming.
And I'd like to call up Supervisor Luis Alejo. I know, well.
Hey, I did bring a certificate for Simone. Anyway, thank you for having this event here in Greenfield. Chris, Simone, and I, and now Robert, we've all had a chance to represent South County, and we do it with a lot of pride. I'm sorry I'm late. I was coming from the Central Valley, but I didn't want to miss this event. Again, we got a big celebration, retirement party, like I think the Board of Supervisors had never seen before. But it's nice that among our Democratic circles that we're also giving Simone a great honor. As many have already said, I'm really honored to be here with you, Simone, because you've been a mentor and certainly a friend and a big champion for working people all throughout the Salinas Valley. Simone and I, our families have some similar roots, because our families, when they migrated from Mexico, they migrated first to South Texas, and eventually our families were recruited to come work here in the Salinas Valley and the Pajaro Valley in Watsonville. But we are proud of Watsonville Wildcats, Simone and I, but we all now represent this beautiful valley called the Salinas Valley. As I was looking to one side of this valley, you see the beautiful pinnacled mountain range on one side, and then you see all the Santa Lucia Highlands on this side of the valley, and just beautiful food being grown that is being put on the tables of millions of Americans all over this country. But it reminds you of our roots, where we came from, and we feel really honored to be able to serve in this capacity as elected officials and to be colleagues and try to do the right thing for the right reasons and for our communities. So Simone, we gave you a lot of accolades already, but Linda, my staff helped me prepare this one because you're her uncle. So on behalf of us, the Board of Supervisors, I like giving Simone as many awards as I can. Thank you, Simone, for being a champion for the people, a trailblazer of Latino politics. Okay, back to you.
All right, thank you, Luis. So this concludes kind of the formal part of our recognition of Simone, but please, we still have plenty of wine to drink, we've got plenty of food to drink. If you haven't had a chance to talk to somebody here, please go and introduce yourself and have a good time. Wait, I'm seeing one more person would like to speak, please.
I'm not going to just sit back. My name is Kathy Fermioni. I was the administrative assistant for the Northern Salinas Valley Mosquito Abatement District. And I was there from 1978 until 2013. And guess who came to my retirement party? That man. And I want to tell you something. He does what's fair, and he'll work hard. And it's like, it's not about him, it's about you and what your issue is and what he could do to make it right. I remember the first time I met him, my boss called him, he was all upset about something. I believe you were teaching and you were a city council member at the time. And he says, I just called Simone Salinas. I don't know when he'll come over. I'm looking in the parking lot. He's just pulled in the parking lot. He's got his hamburger and his Coke or whatever he's gonna drink. He was on his lunch hour from teaching and he showed up, and I never forgot that. He always had time for us through the years, and anything that had to do with our mosquito abatement district, our little district, he was there for us. He's a champion, and you're fair and you do what's right, and we're always going to love you for that. And then later on, I'm retired down in Lockwood. Guess what? I went to him when we had a problem with the lake, North Shore. They were going to totally dismantle the horse. We had a horse facility there that many different groups had contributed thousands of dollars over the years. And everybody says, oh, nobody cares about South Salinas. I go, yes, Simone does. No, he doesn't. I go, yes, he does. And I proved it to him, and we all showed up, and you backed us with Chris's support, and he's continued to help us with our problems down there, and I appreciate it because it's coming to fruition. We're going to have some horse trails opened, and because of the hard work between Simone and Chris. 2 more weeks. You don't know how happy we are about that. But anyway, I want to thank you all very much for being here for him, and I adore him, and Wouldn't miss this chance for a million. Love you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so again, thank you all for being here. Please enjoy yourselves, and thank you very much.